Hey, Year 7, I hope you're all safe and well. This is a recap from yesterday's lesson because you guys weren't in, and I realised that the Corbett math sheet may or may not make loads of sense. So, um, this is what we did in yesterday's lesson. So, we're looking at prime numbers, and that was our title. And prime numbers are really important because they only have two factors. Now, what I have done for the class, which you won't have, is I printed this sheet. So, I'll put the slides on to the Google Classroom next to this video. So if you can print the sheet, if you can't, if you haven't got a printer at home that works, write out the numbers 1 to 100, and then have a go at the task on the previous slide, which is this one. So this slide relates to the 1 to 100 grid. Okay. And I'll read you the story. During a particularly violent thunderstorm, a bolt of lightning strikes HMP Gruesome and opens all the electric doors to the 100 cells inside. Psychopathic prisoners are suddenly free to leave, but there's only 4 wardens on duty who frantically try and shut the cell doors. Okay, so looking at your grid, the first clue, the 100 numbers are the 100 cells, and we're going to cross off the ones that the instructions that the warden shuts. Okay, so number 1 is jammed and remains shut, so he doesn't escape. So cross out number 1. Or blot it out so you can't see it. Okay. Then the first warden, in his infinite wisdom, finishes his cup of tea and then decides he's going to go and go and shut all the cells that have that are multiples of 2. So all the even numbers, but he's a bit silly and he goes charging off and he forgets to do door number 2. So door number 2 stays open, but all the other even numbers are shut. So you can blot out every even number. You can go down the columns below 2, so 12, 14, 12, 22, 42, etc., etc., and the same with all the 6s, 8s, and 0s. So all of those numbers go. Okay. The next warden, he's a little bit slower than the first warden because not only has he had his cup of tea, he's had a bacon sarnie as well. Once he's eaten his bacon sarnie, he decides, right, I'm going to follow, but I'll do all the multiples of 3. And he infinitely forgets number 3, but then does all the multiples of 3. So all the numbers in the 3 times table, you're now going to blot off and cross. So 3 you keep, but 6, 9, 12, 15, etc. Is also gone. Some of those you've already crossed off because they were even numbers and they've all gone. Okay, the third warden, he's woken up from a little power nap. He's also finished a cup of tea and a bacon sandwich and then goes out and goes, crikey, what am I going to do? I know, I'll do all the 5s. And you've guessed it, he forgot number 5 as well. And then the fourth warden goes out after a bacon sarnie, cup of tea, and he finishes the donuts. So he's eaten the donut, the last donut in the packet. He's eaten the sugar that was accumulated in the bottom of the bag. And he's gone, oh my God, what shall I do? And so he picks up all the multiples of 7. So you need to go through your grid, leave 2, 3, 5, and 7, but cross off all multiples of those numbers, and number 1 should be crossed off. And when you're finished, you should hopefully end up with a grid that looks something like that one. So they are all of the prime numbers. Okay. So we looked at that and we made sure everybody had the right numbers. You can imagine that I had to give out lots more sheets because people have made silly mistakes here and there along the way. And that was the prime numbers. Now, this bit you need to put in your notes. Obviously, this is Optimus Prime. You don't need to copy a picture of him. However, prime numbers are really important. They only have 2 factors themselves and 1, which is why 1 is not prime. But all the even numbers after 2 also are not prime because 2 only has itself and 1. So 2 and 1 are factors of 2. And all the other even numbers are multiples of 2. So that's why they've gone. Okay. And then we looked at this bottom statement, the one that's about all other numbers that can be made up of a product of primes. So what does that mean? That means if I was thinking, say, of the number, and I'll show you, I'll go on to the next slide. If I was thinking of number 20, 20 can be made up by breaking it down and going, well, 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 5 is 20. So therefore, this is a product of its primes. Okay, so these are all prime numbers. And then we looked at some other numbers, and I asked students for numbers. So I'll give you an example here of 60. And it doesn't matter how you break it up to begin with. You can either choose to break it into 2, or looking at 60, you can do 6 and 10. And by looking at 6 and 10, neither of these 2 numbers are prime. They're not on your sheet. They're blocked out. So I've got to break this down a little bit further. 6 is 2 and 3. and this one is 2 and 5. And we're going to underline all of these because there are prime numbers. This is called a factor tree. What I want you to do is to try some other numbers. Pick them yourself. Don't go too big. Stay under 100 because then you can see if they're prime on your sheet or not. And see if you can break all the other numbers down into primes like this. This is called a factor tree. So copy this example and then try some numbers for yourself. And that is kind of what we were looking at. Okay, so it looks a bit like a tree, see? And you can either circle these so they look like baubles, or cherries or apples or whatever it is that you've got growing on your tree, but you only circle the prime numbers. So that was yesterday's lesson. What I'll do a bit later on is I will either record live during the lesson and we'll see how we go, or I'll record it during lunch and then I'll send it off to you later on. So this was yesterday's lesson. I don't think there's anything on the next slide. We did also look at Venn diagrams, but I will do a separate video on Venn diagrams later. As I said, I hope you're well. Any questions, just drop it into Google Classroom or send me an email, and I hope you are all keeping safe and well. Take care, guys.